The
You could
fluorescent
have
lights of
waited.
Gate
She was
47
hungry. I
cast
had
their
to.
I
familiar
know,
harsh
it's
glow
just been a
over the
long
crowded
flight.
waiting
We're almost
area,
there.
where Michael Chen sat with his 6-year-old daughter, Emma, cradled against his chest. Her small body trembled with fever, and he could feel the heat radiating through her pink unicorn sweater. He'd used his last vacation days for this emergency trip to Boston Children's Hospital, where specialists waited to examine the concerning symptoms her local doctors couldn't explain. His hand smoothed her dark curls as he whispered reassurances he wasn't sure he believed himself. The weight of single parenthood had never felt heavier than in this moment, watching his little girl suffer while feeling utterly powerless to help her. The boarding announcement crackled through the speakers, and Michael gathered their worn backpack, carefully lifting Emma into his arms. She whimpered softly, pressing her feverish face into his neck. As they shuffled forward in the economy line, he noticed the man in front of them, a silver-haired executive in an immaculate charcoal suit, leather briefcase in hand, radiating the kind of confidence that came with corner offices and six-figure bonuses. "Daddy, I don't feel good," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know, sweetheart. Just a little longer, and we'll be sitting down," Michael murmured, adjusting her weight as his arms began to ache. The executive turned, his eyes sweeping over Michael's rumpled t-shirt, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers before settling on Emma with visible irritation. "Could you keep her quiet? Some of us have important work to do on this flight." Michael felt heat rise to his cheeks, but he kept his voice level. "She's sick. We're heading to a hospital appointment." "Well, perhaps you should have driven if you can't control your child on a plane," the man said, his lips curling into a sneer. "Though I suppose people like you probably can't afford the time off work." Before Michael could respond, the executive had turned away, flashing his first-class ticket at the gate agent with a flourish. Michael stood frozen, Emma's small body growing heavier in his aching arms, the man's words echoing in his mind. "People like you." As if struggling to save for medical bills and juggling single parenthood made him somehow less worthy of basic human decency. They finally boarded, Michael navigating the narrow aisle to their seats near the back. He caught a glimpse of the executive settling into a spacious first-class pod, already accepting a glass of champagne from the flight attendant. Emma curled into the window seat, and Michael draped his jacket over her like a blanket, checking her forehead again. Still burning up. 20 minutes into the flight, just as they reached cruising altitude, Emma's breathing became labored. Michael's heart hammered as he pressed the call button, but before the flight attendant could reach them, a voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Rodriguez speaking. We have a medical situation that requires immediate assistance. If there is a doctor or any medical professional on board, please identify yourself to the flight crew immediately." Michael's blood ran cold. He looked at Emma, whose lips had taken on a bluish tint. "Hold on, baby," he whispered, frantically searching for the flight attendant. A woman in scrubs appeared from 3 rows back. "I'm a nurse," she said, quickly assessing Emma. Her face grew serious as she checked Emma's pulse and breathing. "She needs more help than I can provide. The oxygen levels are concerning." The captain's voice returned, tighter this time, more urgent. "We also need to know, is there anyone on board with fighter pilot or advanced aviation experience? We're experiencing a critical cockpit situation, and the first officer has become incapacitated. I repeat, any fighter pilots or experienced military aviators, please identify yourself immediately." A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. Michael's world spun, his daughter desperately ill, and now the plane itself in danger. Around him, passengers began to murmur anxiously, some gripping their armrests, others pulling out phones despite the no-signal indicators. Then, from the back of the economy section, a quiet voice spoke up. "I'm a former Navy pilot." Michael looked up to see a young woman in casual clothes, jeans, a simple navy blue sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She couldn't have been more than 30, and she moved with calm efficiency toward the cockpit. "Wait," came another voice. The silver-haired executive had emerged from first class, his face pale. "A girl. You're going to trust our lives to some girl who probably flew a helicopter once." The young woman paused, turning to face him with steady eyes. "Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, ma'am. 1,400 flight hours in F/A-18 Super Hornets, including 2 combat deployments and aircraft carrier qualifications. But if you'd prefer to pilot the aircraft yourself, sir, by all means." She gestured toward the cockpit. The executive's mouth opened and closed wordlessly as Sarah continued forward. A flight attendant rushed past, carrying oxygen equipment toward Emma. Michael held his daughter's hand, torn between his own fear and the drama unfolding around them. From the cockpit, they could hear urgent voices. Sarah's tone cut through, clear and authoritative, nothing like the quiet woman who'd been sitting in economy. Copy that. Switching to manual override. I've got the aircraft. Let's run through the emergency checklist. For 40 agonizing minutes, the plane flew with a former Navy fighter pilot at the controls while medical personnel worked to stabilize Emma. The nurse had been joined by an off-duty paramedic, and together they'd managed to get Emma's oxygen levels improving with the plane's medical kit. Michael sat helpless, holding his daughter's small hand, praying to anyone who would listen. Finally, Sarah's voice came over the intercom again, steady and reassuring. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lieutenant Commander Mitchell. We're making an emergency landing in Philadelphia in approximately 15 minutes. I need everyone to listen carefully to your flight attendants and follow all safety procedures. Emergency crews will be standing by. The landing was textbook perfect, so smooth that several passengers applauded when the wheels touched down. Emergency vehicles surrounded the plane immediately, and paramedics rushed aboard. As they carefully transferred Emma to a stretcher, she opened her eyes and looked at her father. "Daddy, are we okay?" "Yes, baby. We're going to be just fine," Michael said, his voice breaking as he kissed her forehead. Sarah emerged from the cockpit, looking exhausted but composed. The executive stood in the aisle, his earlier arrogance completely deflated. As she passed him, he reached out tentatively. I owe you an apology." "Multiple apologies, actually." Sarah paused. "It's not me you owe, sir." The man turned to Michael, who was gathering their belongings to follow the paramedics. "I'm sorry," the executive said, and for the first time, his voice held genuine emotion. "I was cruel and judgmental. I hope your daughter recovers quickly." Michael nodded, too overwhelmed to find words. As he stepped off the plane, Sarah caught up with him. "Hey," she said softly. "I overheard where you were headed. Boston Children's Hospital has an excellent pediatric team. My niece was treated there. She's doing great now." "Thank you," Michael managed. "Not just for that. For everything. We all serve in different ways," Sarah said with a slight smile. "I happen to fly jets. You're raising a daughter alone, getting her the care she needs, showing her what love looks like every single day. That takes a different kind of courage." 3 weeks later, Michael received a package at his home. Inside was a Model F/A-18 Super Hornet with a note, "For Emma, who's braver than any fighter pilot. Wishing her clear skies ahead, Sarah." There was also a letter from the airline. The executive, whose name turned out to be Richard Crawford, had anonymously covered all of Emma's medical bills from that emergency landing and established a fund for her ongoing treatment. Michael held his daughter, now recovering well, her fever long gone and her smile returned. Sometimes, he reflected, it took a crisis to reveal what truly mattered, not the size of your paycheck or the class of your seat, but the content of your character when everything was on the line. Emma had taught him about resilience. Sarah had reminded him that heroes come in unexpected packages. And even Richard Crawford had proven that people could change, could recognize their failures and try to make them right. In the end, kindness had won. Not because it was easy, but because when it mattered most, enough people chose to be human.